Welcome everyone to What the Force, and welcome to our amazing segments, Meta Music. And with me, as always, is Christy Carew. Welcome, Christy.
Thank you for having me.
And today we are dealing with our part 2 on the sequel trilogy, Rey's theme. And why it's so important to talk about this theme is because it basically is the main theme for the sequel trilogy.
Yep.
I mean,
it's when we think about how many, the two themes that we hear the most in each movie, as we discussed last time we talked in the Force Awakens, it's Rey's theme. In The Last Jedi, it's the Force theme.
mm-hmm.
I would argue that both of these are defining the sequel trilogy in addition to Kylo's themes. And once we get episode 9 and see what the theme is that we hear the most in that movie, then we can kind of draw the conclusion of which one is like the unifying thing that we hear the most throughout the entire sequel trilogy. But Rey's theme is, if you talk to anybody who likes Star Wars music and ask what's your favorite new piece of music that he wrote for the sequel trilogy, everybody says Rey's theme.
Everybody says.
Everybody, man, woman, child, elder, hate the sequel trilogy, love the sequel trilogy. Everybody responds to this piece of music with so much appreciation and so much love. And you and I were on Twitter earlier today asking people to tell us what it means to them and what it makes them think of. And we got like such powerful, amazing answers.
Yeah, we really did. We got some great responses to this. Was there anyone that particularly caught your eye? I like Raven _Maiden
Mm-hmm.
3. Then she said, I make an assumption.
Yeah. Maiden. She's one of my really good friends.
Oh, good. Okay. So it's so layered. I feel like it's just her. Everything she is, all full disclosure. I Googled the name of the different motifs and they said chimes motif that evokes her being left as a child. Also so fascinating, and best Star Wars score since Han and Leia's theme, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And then she goes on to say there's the main motif, which is so powerful and strong. On the one hand, I think of Rey swinging her lightsaber on Acto.
Yep.
Kicking ass in the throne room, and really pensive and wistful on others. And I think of her sitting by her fallen AT-AT watching the ships leave Jakku. Yeah. Oh, I love this question. I love her theme so much. There's so many good parts to unpack too. The gallop motif, the
so you can tell she's read Layman. She called it the gallop motif. You can tell she's looked at this encyclopedia
at the very beginning with the solo flute, and it's almost like her driving. Like we hear that when she's trying to like push herself and like get up courage and stuff. It's really interesting. Yep. And then always give me the sense of feminine energy, confidence, and movement.
Such a great answer. So
perfectly sums up what is going on with Rey's theme, and that it is feminine and it is powerful, but yet also she like many women suffers from doubting herself, and that's all in her theme. It's amazing.
I really liked this one too. This is actually another good friend of mine, Cardigan Vixen. She said, for me, it's the musical personification of Rey. It's a piece that feels tentative yet brave, lonely yet open to reaching out into the bigger universe. It finds other themes and weaves itself into them seamlessly, like Kylo's. But also, I notice, like the Force theme, when we're at the end of The Last Jedi and she's sitting next to Leia and holding the broken legacy lightsaber, the Force theme and Rey's theme intertwine in the most amazing ways during that moment. And all the ways, when you compare the way her theme is used in The Force Awakens and the way it's used in The Last Jedi, there's so much that happens in The Last Jedi of her theme being treated differently than we've ever heard it before. So it's really, really amazing how this one piece of music is so layered and so deep and can express so much.
And we loved reading all of these.
Yeah,
you know, like
so good.
Yeah, like Odin Apologist was like It's very fairy tale like. A few people said
Beauty and
that,
the Beast.
it's melancholy and wistful and hopeful, and it goes through these, it brings you through the full range of emotions, up from the lowest low, being alone and solitary, all the way through all of the emotions to having purpose and having a place and having acceptance, not only in like a home, it feels like, but also in finding what she's truly all about.
But how about this too, from Amy Wishman-Nallen? Yeah, it begins with what sounds like one instrument and reminds me of her solitary life. Then other instruments come in and enrich and complement the theme, like Finn and Chewie and others coming into her life. It doesn't sound happy or joyful. It sounds rich and complex.
Yes.
And then it ends with one instrument again. To me, that doesn't show she is alone again. It shows that she has everything she needs. It was all right there at the core all along.
That gave me shivers.
Oh, it's genius.
No, it gave me shivers because recently on a podcast back in December, if you want to look back at it, Ty Black, who does the segment Power of Myth and Symbolism with me, we compared the sequel trilogy as a lens, and actually the whole saga as a lens by which you could view the sequel trilogy and the saga itself through a lens of the heroine's journey, which is the book by Maureen Murdoch, as an alternative to the hero's journey that very much meets the feminine. And, through our discussion, I'm just going to, too long, didn't listen for everybody. Essentially, the heroine's journey and the hero's journey are saying the same thing, but women in the end need to face what is inside of them and bring that to the forefront.
It's a more internal journey.
It's a very internal journey. And my thesis statement kind of for this episode, in addition to going into the details of it, is that Rey's theme follows the heroine's journey.
And I agree with your thesis.
Which, this whole started with me messaging you one day and saying, is this happening?
Yeah. And I was like, I think so. And as we discussed right before we started recording, we have in our notes the cycle of the heroine's journey and kind of the path that she's on by the end of The Force Awakens, and then how far she goes till the end of The Last Jedi. And the music of The Last Jedi is purposely very ambiguous in a lot of different places. Mm-hmm. As we discussed before, gets criticism for reusing a lot of the old themes. But all of the times that he uses them and brings them back are extremely purposeful. And a lot of the music that's tying all of the themes together in all these moments and happening in these very integral scenes, it's supposed to be something that is leaving you questioning what is the outcome. The music in all the Force bonds, the music in the cave scene. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be ambiguous. It's supposed to be catching your ear with these little elements that you've heard before, these little sub-motifs and choices of instrumentation coming back and tickling your ear and being like, wait, where did I hear that before? Like the moments between Rey and Luke. Mm-hmm. Everything is putting you on this very mysterious footing of what she's going through in this segment of the heroine's journey that happens within The Last Jedi. Her path on The Force Awakens is much more clear and defined because the first part of the heroine's journey is much more clear and defined. That whole center part is a dark place.
Yeah, exactly. And it's dark, and it's her diving literally into her own femininity to understand what that means. And like The Force Awakens very much is, in some ways, the typical hero's journey. There's the call to adventure. There is the denial of that adventure when she visits Maz in the castle and she's like, oh no, I've got to get back to Jakku. She literally tells everybody she's got to get back to Jakku. She's got mentors. The mentor literally dies in front of her eyes. Han Solo.
Eating the ogres and dragons, going on the path.
Going on the path, and then the final fight at the end and getting the boon of success. Mm-hmm. And the key lightsaber. Yeah, the lightsaber. She gets it. She gets it in her hand. We hear the full Force theme for her. The key is in the heroine's journey at that moment and at the end, she realizes it's imaginary. She's not done. She's not done growing. She's not done with whatever she needed to learn to become a full and realized woman.
Her hair is still in 3 buns.
Her hair is Still in Three Buns. And actually we get an amazing play in TFA right before she's about to take the steps, and we hear the end song,
The Jedi Steps.
Jedi Steps. Here, thank you. Jedi Steps. She looks back and we hear this hesitant play. And like, wait, aren't I supposed to be, isn't it supposed to be all fixed of her own theme? It's like a questioning play of her theme as she looks back at the Falcon to see how far she's come. She's like, wait, is this the end? Almost. And it's not, because it's not, the boon of success for a woman in the heroine's journey is not real, because it's not the end. She has given away her feminine to try to live in the world of men by the men's rules, by the rules of the hero's journey. And she feels empty. And we hear this very strongly throughout The Last Jedi. You know, I need somebody to tell me my place in all of this. That's actually quotes from Maureen's book, pretty much. Like, that's part of the like disillusionment and not understanding why she doesn't feel more successful. And so that's really, really important. Did you want to say anything else before we jump into the theme and listen to it?
Let's listen to it. Yep. We're doing the concert version.
Yeah, concert. We're going to listen to the full concert version, and we'll talk, and we'll kind of hear about what we hear. Christy's probably going to talk more about the music. I'm probably going to talk more about the emotion, because that's the literal thing that I add to this podcast.
I just thought of something I want to say before.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So obviously this is the concert version arrangement. What that means is that this cue exactly in this iteration and way did not appear in the film. This is a special arrangement that is included on the score. Like, you know, you hear it in the Scavenger when she's introduced, you hear it all over the score, as we've discussed.
But it never gets to its full end resolution of the concert theme in either TFA or The Last Jedi.
This is like the best, most complex and most rich iteration of it. It's
what John Williams intends for Rey.
Yeah.
I would argue for the whole sequel trilogy.
Oh, before we listen, we should also talk about what he says about it.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about John.
First, before we talk about John, let's talk about what he did. So again, when MC publishes this, we'll provide the link to the Laban Leitmotif catalog. So there's the different segments of her theme, they go by different names. He actually, the initial part, da, 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 he considers that an incidental motif, and as we mentioned before, refers to it as gallop, like the energy that is engaging and kind of like starting up, and it feels like a journey beginning. A lot of people on Twitter responded to us that it felt, because of the beautiful woodwinds, it feels very innocent and childlike to them. And then Layman considers Rey A, the quote primary theme, to be da 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 da, and then Rey B to be her chimes theme. Da, 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 da. Now I've always thought of it differently because the B comes before the A, so I've always thought of gathering energy, building, I've always thought of the chimes.
And I always thought the swell was the main part of the theme, but it seems like she has sort of these three pieces to it.
Yeah. And I've always considered the chime, the first theme to be the chimes theme, the second theme to be her quote main theme. There's another a brilliant writer who talks about Star Wars music from Tumblr called Raylo-Musings. She calls them differently. She refers to the chimes theme as almost Rey's quote Jakku theme, like representing her
like home and pulling her back, and
her home and her place, and just the repetition of her daily routine.
I very much agree with that. I feel like that's like especially from a heroine's journey perspective, hearing it at the beginning and the end makes the full cycle.
Exactly.
So it's very important to have that, as well as it's childlike, so it reminds her of family and home, and it also feels incredibly feminine. And young female. And so like from a heroine's journey perspective, one of the first steps is the separation from the feminine. You try to become masculine and tough, and very much that would be her childhood as she was left on Jakku.
Yep. And then Raylo Musings calls the primary theme, she refers to it as Ray's own personal force theme, because it shares some of the same characteristics. And a really interesting...
Interweaves with the force theme, too.
Before we talk about John's thoughts on it, I did notice in Layman's Encyclopedia when we were talking about the associative progressions, Ray's theme is in the category that's tied to destiny, heroism, the light side, and hope, along with the force theme and Across the Stars,
Ooh,
Poe's theme, Chirrut's theme, Young Han, and the Enfys Nest Bee theme. Now, to me, that's very fascinating that Across the Stars, which is one of the, tragic love themes, shares some of the same harmonic associative progressions as Ray's theme and, represents all these other themes. So that's another thing to think about. But when we talk about how much John Williams loves Ray and loves Daisy and loves this character, I mean, it's one of the first things he talks about on every single interview that he has.
I think there was a quote, like, when Kathleen asked him if he would, score episode 9, he's like, well, is Daisy Ridley gonna be in it? And she's like, yes, of course, John, she's the star. And he's like, oh, yes, I would like to compose more music for her. Yeah. And probably said baby good. And then walked out the door.
I think it sounds good, Kathy baby.
Kathy baby.
So he's always said, it's an interesting challenge with her because it doesn't suggest a love theme in any way, which is also why this is me talking, not him. That's also why I think it's fascinating that the associative progressions are tied into one of the greatest love themes of Star Wars. But anyway, it suggests a female adventurer, but with great strength. She's a fighter. She's infused with the Force, and it needed to be something that was strong but thoughtful. I love that. Yeah. He also says, her theme has a musical grammar that's not heroic in the sense of a hero's theme. It's kind of an adventure theme that promises more, resolving itself in the most major triumphant resolutions. I mean, that's pretty badass. Like, in terms of what, if we're going to think about what we're going to get from Ray's theme in episode 9, we've already gotten a clue that we'll talk about later that comes in the finale of episode 8. But I mean, what kind of major triumphant resolutions of her theme are we going to hear? And will it possibly be tied in with the major triumphant resolution of the Force theme? And like, how is it all going to happen?
Can it all happen together? That would be amazing. As well as like the heights that it gets to in the concert version, obviously, right? Yeah. Like, oof.
And maybe a redeemed Ben Solo theme will be wrapped up in it. Maybe the Raylo theme will be wrapped up in it. Like, it's going to be, I mean, this is really his 9th symphony, his masterwork, his masterpiece. It's going to be the best thing he's ever written. I'm drawing a line in the sand and saying that right now.
Theoretically, a redeemed Ben Solo theme is the main theme.
Yeah.
She says out loud. I don't know. Yeah. We're really intense about this. We apologize.
Yes, we are.
All right, you ready to press play on the John Williams Ray's theme concert version?
I'm ready. There we go. So we got these beautiful, very delicate flutes happening.
Yeah.
Very feminine.
Very feminine.
Now we hear clarinet.
It's like a drive around the orchestra.
Everyone is kind of gathering.
Yeah. These are the chimes.
Yeah. Can we get a stronger gallop motif? We start to have some of these low strings. These cellos come in here.
It's like playful and innocent until this part. And then it's like the drive of adventure and journey.
Yep. You're on the road.
On the road. I love that piece.
Here we go. But in this version, it backs down from that.
Yeah, because this is the height of success that she gets to in TFA, right? Yeah. This is the imaginary boon of success. And then it goes, and then it goes, wait a second.
Yep. And here it's going to start going up. The music is continuing to build and struggle, climbing up.
And then here we go down.
Again. We're modulating again right there. Things are very big. Like right now, this is not that big theme right there. That is not necessarily like a triumphant heroic. That's like obstacles. That's struggles. She's still in the thick of it.
Yeah. And she's trying to understand what's going on, because it's like like searching in a way
Yep.
right now. And then she's on the rise again.
Yep. Oh, it's so the orchestration is so beautiful.
So good. Yeah.
Here we go. I love how the brass takes that.
Yeah, the brass takes in. Yeah. And they're together, right?
Yep.
The dun, 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 and the overall, the two different themes are together in this.
Yeah.
Right? They're overlapping.
Yep. They're accentuating the little gallop theme
Down.
keeps coming back.
And then up.
This is very powerful right here.
Yeah. More journey, more adventure. Lots of brass coming in.
I love those little syncopated brass lines coming. Now here. Oh, man.
Brass?
Yeah, it's all beautiful brass right there. Now we get those very light, delicate chimes theme come back in.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of coming full circle in a way.
Back to the
We're
celeste.
back to where we started. So for me, there isn't a section in this theme that really spirals downward and goes into a place that could represent that middle part of the heroine's journey. So the way that I'm looking at it is that the section of the heroine's journey in The Last Jedi with Rey's music, it's all quotations of her theme, and actually only the first part.
Yeah, we only get
it's quotations and breaking down that and bringing it back in different orchestrations and instrumentations.
She never gets the higher rise until the end.
Yeah, it's only until really the finale on The Last Jedi. Let me go back to my notes here. After it's woven with the Force theme. Okay, so in the finale, when it first opens, we get the music for the kids on Canto Bight and Broom Boy. And if you listen to the orchestration of that, it's also very reminiscent of the beginning of Rey's theme, the way that it's repetitive, the use of the harp and the celeste and everything. And again, you can hear the Force theme woven in there to signify that one of these kids, maybe all of them, are Force sensitive. Then when you hear at the end of the finale, when you do hear a full statement of Rey's theme, it's floating above these very tense, uneasy strings. It's kind of something that we hear a lot in The Last Jedi with Kylo's theme.
Right.
And with a lot of some of the other themes like Leia's theme, when you're hearing it and there's this just swirling kind of very tense and dissonant thing that's keeping you off balance. And then a different type of orchestration happens where it feels deeper and more mature and more complex, and more of these melodies kind of like supporting and bumping up against her main theme in a way that suggests the growth that she's had in this movie. And then when the Jakku chimes come back in at the end, they're in a major key.
Unlike in the concert version.
It's the first time out of any of it that we've ever heard this theme in a major key for her. And it is that opening childhood Jakku beginning theme of where she had like some of the most painful, most isolated, lonely, like horrible moments of her life, and where she's just constantly been searching for belonging. This quotation of this theme in a major key, I believe, is predicting for us for episode 9, that everything that she went through in The Last Jedi, as difficult, like Brian always said, he wanted to give her the most difficult thing she could face. It would be so easy if she was a Skywalker. It'd be so easy if she was a Kenobi. It'd be so easy if she was, quote, somebody. It would have been so great and so easy if Ben had just come back with her. It would have been so great if Luke was just, showed her every single secret. I think that it's showing that part of the heroine's journey that she went through and everything that happened to her has made this very huge impact on her that's going to take her forward into episode 9 as a whole, complete person. And as somebody who is going to be happy and who's going to find that belonging and who's going to find the family and the home and everything that she's been seeking. It's predicting for us and letting us know that, she had kind of a hard time in this movie in a lot of ways.
So
but
there's hope, right? There's hope at the end.
All the growth and pain that she went through is leading to what this next episode is going to bring, which is the completion of her heroine's journey and the success. And that's not there by accident. That's not there for no reason. Like, that's not something that he did just because he thought it would sound cool. So
So one thing that I just want to call out is Christy's talking about the credits. Basically, the finale is the credits. Like, and at the very end of The Force Awakens, we hear the Force theme in the celeste. And it's beautiful, and it surprised the hell out of me when I saw The Force Awakens, because I always stay to the end of the credits, because the thing about John Williams and the finale and the credits is that he tells you what are the most important things that you should have paid attention to theme-wise during the movie. And in The Force Awakens, it goes in this order. It goes Rey's theme, Kylo's theme, the Resistance, I think the Force theme that melds into Rey's theme, and then ends on a celeste version of the Force theme.
Yep.
Apologies if I missed one, but essentially that. And we got a really interesting play of what happened in The Last Jedi.
Yeah, like we get a lot of Rose's theme. We get
Holdo's full theme.
Yeah. We get Yoda. We get, I need to listen to it again all the way through and make a note of how each theme flows into the next. But I just love how, as it's ending, it's in this beautiful, like, unusual orchestration of her theme.
We get New Alliance
in
it, and we also get the Crate sort of main battle theme.
Yeah, and we get the Crystal Cavern run again real quick.
Crystal Cavern, which is like the main theme, battle theme. Yeah. It's the Falcon theme. I mean, it's got a couple of names.
By the way, when that, like, I wish I could relive the experience of seeing The Last Jedi for the first time, honestly. But out of all the moments that everybody, like, jumped out of their seats and screamed, like, that moment of Chewie going down into those caverns and that theme coming back, like, so many people around me literally were, like, out of their seats screaming and yelling, like, and then we get to hear it again in the credits. It's freaking awesome.
It's such a good play of sort of the battle and Falcon theme, which is just amazing, because we hear that actually that in the asteroid belt, and escaping from, I think it's in the asteroid belt of Empire Strikes Back. Okay, that is Rey's theme in a very quick listen. Hopefully everybody kind of caught what we were saying about it.
Yeah, you know what? I want to give another shout out to Reylo Musings. There's another one of her meta that we'll post when we do this. It's about dark side versus light side with Rey's theme and Kylo Ren's theme. And I'm waiting for her to write more meta about The Last Jedi. Most of her meta is The Force Awakens centered. So this is a quotation from her meta. At first glance, one of the most visually striking things about Rey's theme is the repetition it employs. So if you're looking at the actual sheet music of the different motifs written out. It's very difficult to place her theme specifically into light side or dark side based on the common characteristics. And this is coming from her breaking down the different thematic elements that tend to be present in the themes that represent people on the light side and the themes for people on the dark side. There's always these certain elements that are present in each iteration that kind of like sense, like you can sense from it, even if you don't know anything about music, that like this is a bad guy and this is a good guy, right?
Yeah.
And then she goes on, her theme does tend to employ a lot of ostinati, and ostinati are, these rhythmic things like that
staccato type.
Yeah, like patterns, rhythmic patterns that tend to provide energy and flow and movement, and a lot of time melodies will be over top of them. Hans Zimmer's the master of ostinati. So her theme does tend to employ a lot of ostinati like dark side themes, but also tends to cover a wider range of notes as is common for light side themes, which is why, Kylo Ren bad guy theme, da 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 da. There's not that big of a range of notes, whereas Rey, da 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 da. It's like, spread out longer, right?
Yeah.
Darth Vader, da 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 da. Whereas the Force theme, da 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 da, da 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 da. It's kind. That's a very
keeps on going. Same with the main theme. The
Yeah.
main theme goes like up and then skips, and goes around.
So then she says that the two sections of her presented theme have been separated here. So she separated out the chimes and the gallop and then the main theme to better show each of their individual characteristics. Ray's first heard theme with repeating patterns and weak melodic direction is most applicable to her life on Jakku because she kept the same routine day in and day out and had no direction in her life other than surviving. And then the second excerpt of her theme is related to the new journey that is ahead of her once she leaves Jakku, with large, wide leaps, common of light side themes, echoed the difficult leaps she's had to take to leave her home and to help those around her. And as her future journey is highly driven by the balance of the Force, this second theme serves well as a personal Force theme for her. And I remember reading this and just being like, damn, that is like so spot on. It's so brilliant. And then she also has another meta where she talks about the difference, how in cinematic film music language, depicting good versus evil, there's instrument groupings that composers tend to gravitate towards, meaning that a lot of the time, not always, because there are definitely exceptions, strings and woodwinds are going to be associated with the leitmotifs for the good guys. And then the darker brass is going to be for the bad guys. Whereas she makes the point that the horn, the French horn, which is the instrument that the Force theme is played on, yes, it's made out of brass, but it's always included in the woodwind quintets because of its range, because of its timbre, the way that it is a hybrid between a brass and a wind instrument.
Do we get a lot of French horn in Ray's theme?
Several times her theme evolves out of being played in woodwinds and strings, and we get that brass. And there's more meta. Everybody just needs to read every single piece of meta that Rayla Musings did, but she has another meta where she talks about all the pivotal scenes between Ray and Kylo Ren and how he's actually, the interaction with him pulls her theme into the brass.
We're gonna get to that when we talk about the two of them together on screen.
Yeah. I want everybody to do their homework before we have that episode and read all of Raylo Musing's meta, because she broke it down like so amazingly and so succinctly. And all of these ideas are absolutely present in her theme and the way that it changes and transitions over the course of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
What I love about The Force Awakens is that we never move past pretty much what is represented in the Scavenger or the first part. And in The Last Jedi, we only get one kind of final, like, yay, we're powerful from Rey's theme, really only when she's really using the Force, right? And we never get that full rise until kind of the end of the movie. So it's like she really...
and when she's training with her lightsaber too.
Oh yeah, when she's training with her lightsaber, and I think we might get a tiny bit when she gets the da 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 in the throne room scene in A New Alliance.
Yeah, it's that I can't, like I said to you in the notes, I can't tell you how many times after, in the months and weeks after The Last Jedi, people would be messaging me and saying like, no, I heard Across the Stars in the throne room and it's at this moment. And I'd be like, you guys, that's not Across the Stars. No, it's Rey's theme.
It's Rey's theme.
It's at 2:25 on The Last Alliance. Her theme is she's battling the Praetorian Guard.
Yeah.
There's all this stabbing brass rhythms happening around it. And there's another amazing instance of it around 2:52. She's trapped. She's struggling against the Praetorian Guard. And the theme itself sounds like it's trapped. It's syncopated. It's like da 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 da. Then it goes into da 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 right before she is successful, kills him, and you hear the da 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 da, which I love. My son absolutely loves that part.
Yeah, that's great. I'll cut that piece in right here so you can listen to that.
Yeah, and we hear so many of these kind of like hesitant, tentative. It's always just that quote of that one part of the theme. We hear it in Old Friends after Luke decides that he is going to give her lessons. You know, he's looming over her in the middle of the night, similar to the way he loomed over Ben. There's a really beautiful rendition of it during lesson 1 while she's got her eyes closed having her lesson with Luke. You know, like we mentioned before, practicing with her lightsaber. And then during the cave, we don't hear Rey's theme at all during this, like one of the most pivotal themes of her, of the entire, one of the most pivotal scenes of the entire movie. That's during her initiation and descent down to the goddess and her descent into the dark place. And you hear a lot of these slippery, slidey bassoon motifs and all these kind of like da 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 in the bassoon. And then another place where we hear that is during the third Force Bond, when she's confronted by a shirtless, glistening Kylo Ren. You know, she's just come out of the water and her hair is out of the 3 buns. I'll never forget when I read Nat's meta, Ashes for Foxes, when I read her incredible, like seminal meta on the heroine's journey and what Ray goes through in that cave, and like how her hair is now down. I had not noticed. I didn't notice.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And I did. It's like all the themes that she brought up there and all the connections that she made. I remember reading. I devoured that meta in one sitting, and then just went back and kept watching that scene over and over again. But yeah, we don't hear her theme in that entire
That very
part.
much represents the feminine taking a hold of Ray, and I highly recommend reaching out and just start reading the wonderful metas out there, like Ashes for Foxes. Nat wrote that amazing one, and of course recommend Power of Myth and Symbolism, The Heroine's Journey.
Yep.
And Female Gaze, because pretty much everything in The Last Jedi is from a female perspective, even though Rian Johnson directed it and wrote it.
And oh my gosh, I think I already sent you my YouTube playlist where I've compiled all the best and most beautiful video essays that talk about The Last Jedi. And a lot of them are men, because men predominate on YouTube, right? And we predominate on Tumblr and other spaces. But it's so interesting to see these guys over the past year start to realize these concepts. Like, women in the fandom have been talking about this since day one.
Yeah.
And about how Ryan really tapped into all of these elements from the way that women process media and the tropes and symbolism and stuff that we're very, very familiar with and that we love and appreciate in media. And now over the past year, so many of these other men are starting to understand it and tap into it and realize and see it from this perspective. And it's really, really fun to see.
Yeah. And I have so many thoughts about like understanding the themes and like, hey, the reason why women hear this and see it and understand it almost innately is because it's written literally in our language.
Yeah.
It's the language by which we use for our fiction. And this song speaks to so many women. Like, it really does. It is powerful, and it is this whole theme. It means so much.
Yeah, like these responses that we got. I mean, and I really think that John Williams, through his identification with the character of Ray, and we may never know why he identifies so much with the character. I do know the publicly available details of his life, and I do know, some of the stuff that he has gone through. But because I only know him from that one time that I sobbed on his shoulder, I don't know what particularly of her story it is that he really felt himself relating to. And I think that he has always written the most beautiful themes for these amazing, strong female Star Wars characters, and like Leia's theme. But it's so interesting that might be another fun thing we could do, to compare and contrast Rey's theme and Leia's theme.
Yeah.
Because they're both for these heroines that we love and appreciate so much, but their nature of them is so different.
Oh yeah. Leia's theme is so, I would just in some ways represents like how sad her life is. Like,
and a lot of people that we talked to on Twitter brought that up.
Yeah, like that Leia's theme feels like she is constantly dealing with tragedy and has to be the strong one. And literally that is the character of Leia.
And she triumphs. Her theme ends in such like a beautiful...
Oh yeah. Did you want to talk a little bit about like the masculine and the feminine and the different instruments? Because typically flute, and I would say celeste, although it can represent childhood,
innocence, and
innocence and things like that. Flute and sometimes how strings are played is very feminine.
Yeah, it has to do. I mean, it's traditionally just from the way that a woman's voice is higher, and these instruments are higher in the range of the orchestral palette. So and then these brass instruments and these lower ones are more robust and stuff. It plays into, not that all men are robust and all women are delicate, but
I would say that it's hard to be percussive with higher instruments. It's easier to be
you can
percussive.
Do it with certain ways of tonguing woodwind instruments and certain ways of bowing with strings and stuff. But it's definitely, when I'm writing, like when I wrote something for you recently, I wanted to get a sense of adventure and power and driving forward, and I just naturally gravitated towards using a French horn to express this melody. And I was using strings underneath to give this propulsive ostinati type, like that thing that's happening. That's an ostinato. When something like when you want a theme to be like, when I write a love theme and I want to express this very beautiful flowing melody, like a lot of the time I will choose a flute. A lot of the time I will choose a solo violin. When I'm trying to express something that is very sorrowful, like a film I did recently where the main character kind of starts out like Ray, very isolated in a very kind of like harsh atmosphere, and I used just a solo cello because a solo cello is the closest thing in timbre to a human voice and the way a human voice speaks. And I had the cellist play very, very expressively, like it was a person crying out alone in the desert. You know, so there's all of these ways that the instruments relate to us as humans and how we express ourselves. And it's not even so much that more women play these instruments and more men play these instruments.
No.
It's more just the way that it has been traditionally associated with the range of the actual notes, and then the range of human voice and emotion and all that stuff. So yeah, and you know, if you just take Ray and Kylo's theme and like Raylo Musings does in this one essay and just compare it, you know, like we're always hearing his on brass and we're always hearing hers on strings
Flute.
or woodwinds until they start influencing each other,
and then they mix a little bit, right? And then
and the way that Ray's theme was written too, that's why it's very difficult to say that we, you know, pointing out these connections between her theme and the Kylo Ren theme and Across the Stars. It's very difficult to say that those similarities and the way they lock and the way that they're related are just part of the overall Star Wars harmonic language. Because a lot of the time there are coincidences that people bring up and I'm like, nope, that's just Star Wars musical language. That's just the world that we're living in. But then there's other things where he clearly set out to have them be connected.
Can you give me an example of the Star Wars harmonic language?
Yeah, there was somebody once who tweeted me and said, oh my gosh, in The Phantom Menace, when the Naboo starfighter is setting down on the desert of Tatooine, and you know the characters who are present are like Qui-Gon and little baby Anakin and stuff. There's notes that sound exactly like Kylo Ren's theme, and they're hinting at Kylo Ren, and I was just like,
it's probably just being like dark side or evil, or
that's a
something
stretch.
like that.
The intervals were similar, and the timbre and orchestration was similar, and everything was very, very Star Warsy, and those intervals that he uses are used all throughout this world. There's not really a great case that can be made that anything about this particular moment of this starship landing on the sand has anything that is trying to be linking to a character that they hadn't even come up with yet, you know, when they're doing the prequels, and like somebody that they hadn't even started. I mean, always in the EU, Han and Leia got together and had children, but you know, that's not something that George Lucas was focusing on creating the prequels. So, you know, that's an example. And I've had other ones where, yeah, it's the reason why it sounds like that is the reason that a John Powell, a Gordy Hobb, all these people, the guy who's Kevin Kiner, that's why these people can come in and put their own stamp on the world of Star Wars music while staying in the same sandbox, because there's a certain harmonic, melodic language that has been established, and that gives you the feel and the sound of Star Wars. It's part of why I'm so excited about The Mandalorian and the composer they chose for that, Ludwig Göransson. He's such a musical chameleon. He's so like, he produced Childish Gambino's record, and he did the Black Panther score. He's very, and yet he's like a fully USC film and TV orchestrally trained composer. Like, he comes from such a diverse, rich, incredible background that I'm so excited to see him play in the sandbox, because he's going to be taking the themes and honoring them. And I have another friend I've told you about who works for Disney and works on a lot of the games and VR and stuff, and does a lot of Star Wars work. And, you know, he's got his own voice as a composer, but getting to hear him play with the themes and do cool new things with them, that's part of the world that you live in. And when you score a fan film or you score a project that's paying homage to Star Wars, there's these certain things, like those associative progressions we talked about, like your light side character having a long flowing theme, like your dark side character perhaps using a tritone, the devil's interval. There's all these little things that, you know, he has established that as we continue on in the saga and more composers start picking up the baton, you'll see everybody kind of incorporating these elements into their own style and their own way of doing it.
I'm just going to point out the devil's tritone is the basis for Palpatine's theme. basically
It's
pure
in
evil.
Kylo's theme.
It's in Kylo's theme. Yeah, it's very like
It's in Darth Vader. It's in the Imperial March.
Very evil.
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 Yeah.
Yeah. And it's used in a lot of 1980s metal. You know, like
that's the most evil.
Judas Priest used it a lot. It represents evil, and it sounds evil and disconcerting to us. You know, and so we're saying that, okay, first, there is a harmonic language that is being used in Star Wars. The Star Warsian, established by John Williams, language of music, which ties back to the classical composers. And in some ways, I would say the very romantic period in Hollywood where there was a lot of sweeping melodies and
Corn Gold.
Yeah, exactly. Like it meant something to have these very emotional themes happen. That is the sandbox by which we are playing, much like Lucasfilm, from a story group perspective, will play in the sandbox that George Lucas created. Composers will be playing in the sandbox that John Williams created. John Williams knows his toys the best. Yep. One would say.
Yep.
He knows what things mean. He knows how to put them together. Rey's theme is a deeply personal, feminine, internal journey to discover that actually the power that you needed existed inside of you the whole time, but you had to go on this crazy adventure all the way across the galaxy to discover, hey, I am actually where I should be. I am who I should be.
Yep. And that's something that I'd love for someone to ask him.
Yeah.
I actually only really know two really well-known film music journalists. I read every single article that they put out. And I had an opportunity to be conversing with one of them about something unrelated the other day. And he noticed the signature in my email, which you've seen a million times, which is a quote from John Williams. But he says, wait, I think that's from an article that I wrote about him.
That's really
and I said,
funny.
oh, yes. Music is there for everybody. It's a river we can all put our cups into and drink it and be sustained by it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
He said that when he was talking about The Force Awakens and the new sense of vitality that he got. Because also him coming back to this project, like maybe it's not necessarily a given that when JJ called him, he was ready and raring to go. Maybe he had ambivalence about coming back and doing the sequel trilogy. Maybe it really was reading the script and finding out about Rey and connecting to this character and seeing the early photos of Daisy in her costume and stuff. Like maybe this is really what got him, because he says all of a sudden he felt this vitality and you could hear it in the theme that he wrote for her. You could feel his connection to the story really coming through from understanding what they were doing and where they're going with her. And the other day, somebody asked me about the KUSC interview that he did when he was nominated for an Oscar, and how if you listen to it in context, you can see that they were joking and around with each other. And the interviewer, Jim Shveda, says, "Oh, I don't believe that she's nobody." And, they had a little chuckle, and John Williams says, "Oh, I don't either. I still think it could come out." Like, obviously, that's not him saying, I don't approve of where the story went and she, that shouldn't have happened to her. He's expressing that he wants for her what we all want for her, which is that family and belonging and sense of purpose. And he's not saying that he wishes Ryan would have done it a different way, or that, all these articles were spawned from that of like, John Williams believes in Rey Skywalker. All of this stuff came out after that. And it's like, he's allowed to have his own opinion and his own headcanon and his own way of things working out. But he's still writing this music with like such extreme intentionality and knowing exactly where the story is going, in a way that he didn't with A New Hope, as you and I have discussed a million times before. Some of the stuff that happens in that doesn't mean anything because they didn't know there was going to be another movie. And he didn't know that Luke and Leia were related. And he didn't know.
And he had to make a bigger galaxy with musically. He had to make a bigger sandbox. Give the guy a break.
He didn't know. He didn't know any of that stuff was going to happen. So, but now he knows, and they've known since the early days of planning out the sequel trilogy. They've known like this has been.
And like bringing it back to J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams knows how important this aspect of the storytelling is.
As we discussed in our amazing last episode, J.J. Abrams, the composer's director.
Yes. He
Check
knows.
it out on YouTube.
YouTube or on the feed, of course.
Sure.
This is, again, part 2 of this whole journey, and we might end up making it more parts if we end up needing to talk more about other themes that are in the sequel trilogy so far. And of course, when episode 9 comes out, I would love to have Christy back to specifically talk deep dive into that soundtrack.
Oh, you can't get away from me.
No, it's not happening.
I'm also trying. My son watches Despicable Me all the time. I'm trying to invent a shrink ray gun so that I can shrink myself and sneak into the episode 9 recording session at Sony. That's a thing I'm working on. So if anybody out there is a physicist and like understands like these things, please get in touch with me, because it's a very long shot that I would get in that room in any other way. I also would take someone who's willing to teach me how to play one of these orchestral instruments really, really well, so that I can then audition to
in the next 6 months.
In the next 6 months. I'm a really fantastic pianist, but I can't play any other instrument that they would be.
What I was going to say, J.J. Abrams understands the importance of the score and understands the importance of themes and understands especially what John Williams has done for Star Wars. And he probably had a good conversation with him. He might have even brought Daisy in and said, hey, meet Daisy. And he's like, hello. And Daisy is so sweet and so wonderful. And John was probably and I know that there's a couple of interviews where JJ like went to his house and spoke with him. I imagine, and this is again just all speculation, but I imagine that JJ has known for quite a long time roughly what Rey's journey will be. Certainly it was up to Rian's interpretation as he was writing his script, how that would be interpreted in The Last Jedi.
Yeah, but they were in touch the entire time.
I know.
Whatever Rian did, JJ knew and then could tell J-Dubs.
Exactly. And you don't write the concert version of Rey's theme without knowing that she's going to be okay, because she's so okay by the end. She is better than okay. She has made a full cycle journey, and it follows part 1 and part 2 of the concert version, and it's beautiful. So what are we going to get? We're going to get part 3. And did you want to specifically listen to that part of it? It's at 2:09 on the thing, and we can just listen to this one piece, and then we'll talk about what we think is going to happen for Rey.
Back on the concert version, yeah
2:09.
Okay.
So this is just as it's starting to sweep up again.
This is her biggest challenge yet. This is her biggest. This is balancing the Force, saving the galaxy. Here's the biggest test where she's really going to be defined as a character right here. This is going to be her moment.
Those French horns.
And now the only difference that I foresee is that this whole last part is going to be major key, is going to be happy, is going to be wrapped up in all different sorts of themes.
It'll be like a celebration at the end, you think?
Yes. Not so much crazy end of Phantom Menace wild party in the streets of Naboo, but because for me, like my headcanon of the way that
End of End of Phantom Menace.
Like it's gonna my headcanon of what's gonna happen at the end of episode 9, because I know everyone is like dying to know this piece of information. I think that it's going to end with an epilogue of sorts where we see these two people on an island somewhere. Maybe they're back on Octu, maybe they're somewhere else. And there's not a lot of people with them. I don't think they're totally alone. There's maybe like a small handful of people that they are training. But they are very isolated. And then we see Rey turn to the side, and we see the shape of a pregnant belly, and the camera goes up into the sky, and we see her and Ben standing there together, or whatever's happening, and the Force theme and Rey's theme and the Redeem Ben Solo theme and all of these things are happening together, and it goes off so that about 30 years from now, when our daughters are us now
are podcasting about Star Wars.
Can be podcasting about Star Wars and going to premieres together and having a fantastic time, that they can bring the Skywalker saga back at some point, because even though they say, you know, every saga must end and like it's the end of the Skywalkers, there's no way I think that they will end it. I think that the same thing is going to happen where 20, 30 years from now, for a new generation, bring back a new generation. And that one meme that's floating around the internet of like the Skywalker family tree with everybody's face crossed out, like they're not going to have it end that way with the Skywalkers just done. So that's part of what I think we're going to hear with the way that her theme resolves and the music that we get for her in episode 9 is I think that it will end again in a very internal, very delicate, very probably that same instrumentation of the flute and the celeste and the woodwinds and everything very delicate and peaceful and in a major key and feeling very resolved and feeling like home, but it's going to be another beautiful cycle for her starting again. Because I've seen some pictures of the heroine's journey. Like there's so many different images that you can see. I've seen some that have the actual journey of becoming a mother as part of it and as like one of the next journeys that you can go on. And that is one of the most internal, like private, amazing journeys if you decide you want to do that. And you shouldn't do it unless you really want to do it, folks. But I think that's
Christy told you, don't do it if you don't want to do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, like you really gotta want to.
Yes.
That's what I think.
And so I mean, yes, and one thing Maureen would tell you, Maureen Murdoch, who wrote The Heroine's Journey, she would say that everybody goes through multiple heroines' journeys throughout their lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I think this isn't the end for her. This is the one for her as a 20-year-old woman. There's going to be more happening for her. And that's why I think that any sort of scene like that would take place, you know, after many years had passed and after a lot of other things had happened. So
yeah. No, and I very much am with you that I think that somehow they're gonna go and be elsewhere. I don't know what that elsewhere means, but I think that they're gonna be off together somewhere.
I don't think he's going to be a part of polite society. He's not going to be a hero, not going to be a leader. Like I love to read fics where they are leaders of the galaxy and he's a senator and she's like training the Jedi and everybody knows them and they're going to balls and dancing and stuff. I love to read that, but that's not feasible in this
quiet community
galaxy at all.
Is wonderful. I also like I've always said I imagine that they go off and become moisture farmers. Like
I love that. I like love that.
It's like very round and like the whole saga kind of
it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Yeah, it's like poetry, it rhymes, but it sounds so lame when I say it out loud.
I was going to Tashi Station to pick up some power.
I just want to Ray Kylo. I mean, bad.
I'd love to see their like annoying teenage kids yelling at them about that. That's great.
I mean, in some ways, like if they do have kids, they would have to go off into the wilderness to raise them.
Yeah.
Like, where could we raise these kids that they can't break the galaxy?
Exactly.
You know? That's pretty cool. Well, was there anything else you wanted to cover today? I think this is pretty fun. Oh, we can talk about what we're going to talk about next.
Yes, what are we going to talk about next?
We're going to talk about Kylo.
Right? Ooh!
Kylo Ren! The thirst order is here.
The thirst is strong.
The thirst is strong. So we're actually going to talk about Kylo Ren, his two major themes. We're going to talk about at least some of the stuff I see from a redeemed Ben Solo theme perspective and what we hear. I'm going to pull some music directly from the movies because it's a little bit different than the released soundtrack. So yeah, we're going to talk about Kylo.
Torn apart,
talking about a little bit of New Alliance because what happens with Kylo in New Alliance is so weird.
It's fascinating. It's really like the music in that, except for a couple of parts where it's focusing on Rey, the music of A New Alliance is like totally what's going on inside his head.
Yeah.
And what he's doing.
Yeah. It follows him. Like it follows what he is doing. It is primal in some ways and it's worried about Rey. And it's like so we're going to play that and talk about what's going on with our boy Kylo.
And there's a couple other like very seminal metas that I will be referring to. Another one by Raylo Musings and another one by Hunted by a Creature wrote a brilliant meta comparing some of the elements in A New Alliance to a very well-known Stravinsky piece, like especially the percussion and a lot of the stabbing strings and stuff. So that'll be a really fun discussion to get into and talk about Stravinsky's influence on the music of Star Wars as well.
Oh, there was a Tchaikovsky theme that my good friend Mel, Psychology on Twitter and Tumblr, she pointed out that there's actually a Tchaikovsky theme that is very, very similar to Ray's theme. It's just slower.
Yeah.
And it follows kind of the but I think it's like much slower. So props out to her for
she's brilliant. She's so
tie
smart.
back. Yeah. There's so many brilliant, amazing people talking about the music, and we're just happy to bring a few of those voices to the forefront. Raylo Musings is amazing. Just read all of that stuff.
And Hunted by a Creature too. We'll link you to all of it. It's just, I mean, you can go deep dive into this like I have many times and just find all kinds of like how exactly layered and deep it is. These movies, you can look at them from every single frame, like, you know, the YouTube channel Every Frame of Painting.
Yeah.
So you can literally, like, everything that's happening in all of these scenes, like a frame by frame analysis, it's a masterpiece, and the level of detail that went into it. And then you realize that it's the same thing for the music. It's the same thing for the sound design. It's the same thing for the lighting. It's the same thing for how they colored it. It's like every single step along the way of putting these movies together, everything has been so thought out and so detailed and so important and vital to the storytelling and the narrative. That's why when people ask me to rank my favorite Star Wars movies, I do so saying, look, I love them all. Just because Rogue One is last doesn't mean I don't love the shit out of Rogue One and watch it all the time. But honestly, the sequel trilogy has been creeping, so that now I rank obviously The Last Jedi is my favorite, but The Force Awakens has crept, and it's now, number 4 and could probably quite likely overtake and become number 3. They're just brilliantly constructed, beautiful pieces of art on a level that I think more thought and more time has gone into them than any of the other movies.
Oh, I wanted to also, before we sign off and say goodbye to Christy, because she's super busy tonight as we're recording. She's like, I also have to work. And I'm like, oh my God. So thank you
It's only because we just got back from the holidays. I tried to be more relaxed on the holidays.
I want to thank everybody for listening in and all of the amazing feedback on the episodes that we get. We get tons of comments on YouTube, so keep those up, because it means that both Christy and I can actually comment on and give you feedback back on those things.
And thanks for engaging with us on Twitter today.
Oh yeah, on Twitter. Thank you. And this episode's going to come out in 2 weeks, so awesome. 3 weeks.
We'll try to tag everybody we shouted out.
Yeah. Oh my God. You have to figure that one out.
Okay. I keep
amazing. But what I want to say is, if you would like to ask us a question more directly, specifically Christy, who's amazing, you can send those to the What the Force podcast email, which is wtforcepodcast@gmail.com. Just mark it with the subject metamusic or music, and I will make sure that Christy and I read them, and we will be selecting some to start reading on the show, because we want to start talking and engaging more directly with people that have questions. So please do, if you are interested, send us some listener feedback so that we can talk to you more directly, and if you have questions or if you want to talk to us about it.
Yay!
That's my pitch.
Love it.
And thank you, Christy, as always, for
having me.
Coming on the show and just chatting, two intense women talking about music. Christy, where can people find you?
Twitter @Christy_Carew, Instagram Christy Carew Music, and then on Tumblr still, I haven't left.
Unlike the rest of the universe.
Yeah, it's gotten a little quieter on there lately, but enjoy all Need Nothing -blog on Tumblr. And then here at What the Force.
Thank you as always for coming on the show. This has been What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould. We now have a Patreon available at patreon.com/whattheforce. We'd like to thank our patrons who love What the Force, In Wild Space and Night Huntress for supporting the show, as well as all of our other patrons. Check it out if you're interested in supporting the show. We will be releasing special content as well as updates through the Patreon. We are available on iTunes, Google Play, and pretty much everywhere podcasts are found, including YouTube. Our website is whattheforce.ca. We're available on Facebook at What the Force Podcast, and you can reach out to us on Twitter at the BT Force Show to start a conversation. Cheers.